Chapter 13, Career and Employment Assessments. Career assessment is pretty different than our previous chapters talking about intelligence testing and aptitude and achievement testing. Career assessment is really a foundation of career planning, which is a huge part of someone's life process, particularly in Western cultures where career is a very large part of identity. This career assessment process can be something that feels kind of raw and a bit personal for folks. So just something to bear in mind. And we will have a class on career theory, and we'll talk in more depth about career assessment and get to work with some career assessments a little bit more in that class. So this assessments course is really just focused on different assessment options and taking a look at how we use those in terms of helping with career planning, and we're focusing less on the theory piece here. So career assessment in and of itself can help with clarifying interests, can explore values related to career, can help with some amount of personality assessment, also looking at things that would look at aptitude or skill related to certain types of careers, or gathering information about making decisions about the future in terms of career, or making decisions about hiring someone related to career. So career assessment is something that would come up in all stages of someone's life, not just in K through 12 schools, but something that would be a part of your life process throughout the lifespan in some form or another. So talking about interest inventories specifically, and my husband has decided this is just a very nice moment to run the lawnmower outside. So hopefully you're not hearing that background noise, and I apologize if you do. So looking at interest inventories, the purpose of these are really to help someone with career exploration. And one of the most important things related to interest inventories are that the output of these assessments are not really meant to be predictive. So it's not really designed to take something like a strong interest inventory, look at the list of careers that it would suggest based on your interest, and then say, this is the job that you need to have. The purpose is exploration. So talking about different aspects of types of careers that might or might not connect to your interests, and how those might inform your decision making, considering a lot of other factors too. So that's sort of a common misconception or a misnomer about interest inventories, that they're meant to be sort of predictive or kind of like this, like a crystal ball, or something that would just tell you definitely what you need to do with the rest of your life. And that's not really what they're designed to do. So we'll talk about 3 of the most commonly used interest inventories. And again, we'll get into these a little bit deeper in the career class and get to take some of these in the career class. But we have the self-directed search. So this is one of the older versions of career interest inventories. You'll notice that all 3 of these connect to some idea of the Holland theory of career development. And there are a lot of theories of career development out there, but Holland is a pretty big and well-known one. And a lot of interest inventories use that Holland typology to help connect someone's interests with different careers. And we'll go over that typology here in just a moment. But the self-directed search is sort of just based on this Holland theory, and you take the assessment, and then it gives you a 3-letter code that indicates what areas you have more interest in terms of those Holland typologies. So a lot of these other assessments that we'll talk about operate in the same sort of way. It's just the self-directed search is a pretty quick and simple, here's your 3-letter Holland, what's called a Holland code, which is a combination of your interests, and they're usually listed in order of which ones were the stronger interests. So the first letter in the code would be the stronger interest, and then so on and so forth. So if you had like an R, A, E, for example, the first letter R, realistic, would be the strongest interest that came up for you. So then we have the strong interest inventory. This one is very popular, very widely used, very well known. A lot of K through 12 schools will use a version of the strong A lot of career centers like Student Success at the college use a strong interest inventory. These are used for a broad range of occupations across the lifespan. Now it's pretty readily available online, so it's easy to take. And then sit down with someone for some help with interpreting. But the score reports are pretty user-friendly. And it uses that Holland typology, and then it takes a step further and gives you a list of all kinds of different careers that match up to your Holland typology code. So it's got lists and lists and lists of different careers that are integrated into the test, and they match up to those different Holland codes based on the types of things that you would do in that assessment, or based on what you would do in that career, excuse me. So it explores interests based on a broad range of occupations, but it also incorporates things like what you do for fun, like hobbies, what kinds of educational subjects that you enjoyed, and it puts all of those things together to give you different themes and scales, primarily based on that Holland code. So there's occupational themes, it gives you basic interests, it talks to you about occupational skills, which are how much satisfaction you might find from different types of careers, and some personal styles related to how well you work with others, what kinds of environments you thrive in, your leadership style, and so on. So in our course shell, there's an example of a strong interest inventory readout that you can take a look at to see all of those different subscales and themes that you get in the readout. And then you have the CISS, the Campbell Interest and Skills Survey. So this gives interests and your own estimation of your own skills. So it's not necessarily a skills inventory like we'll talk about later in the chapter. It's a self-report of how well I think I do at certain types of tasks, and then what kinds of things that I'm interested in, and it puts those things together. So it gives me there's an orientation scale that gives me broad themes of things that I'm interested in and I think that I'm good at. And then it gives more detailed subscales of how those might match up to different careers that would potentially be a good fit for me. And then I would use those to explore some options. So looking at the Holland theory, what's called the RIASEC codes. So Holland's theory divides occupations or careers into different types of areas, and they say that you have certain sort of characteristics or qualities that would align you with certain types of careers. And he divides these into 6 different areas: realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional. And so when you take Holland-based interest inventories, it will tell you which of these are stronger for you and which of these are not. So if you're, for example, really strong in realistic, then you are practical, scientific, methodological, and you might enjoy careers in areas of public health or different areas of healthcare because you like to seek scientific answers to questions. Or you might be more social. So in that case, you are more about informing and training and connecting with others. And so you might go into education or different kinds of like helping professions, those kinds of things. And as we look at this hexagon, it puts things that are more opposite each other in the model, and things that are closer to each other next to each other in the model. And again, we'll get into this a lot more in the career class, but I wanted to give you just a bit of an overview of this model so that you could take a look at it. And if you're looking at something like a strong interest inventory output or playing with ONET a little bit in their interest profiler, you have a bit of an idea of what these codes mean. So there are a lot of criticism or drawbacks to using interest inventories. And a lot of these are just related to partially using them correctly. Because as I said before, it's important to not use them as predictive tests that are going to tell you what you have to do with your life, because that's not really what they're designed to do. And as we're going to talk about in each of these chapters related to different types of assessments specifically, it's so important to use assessments in alignment with their purpose and what they were designed to do in the first place. So it's important to note that interest does not equal aptitude, which means that I could be really interested in something and not necessarily have the skills or training or natural talent to be able to do those things. So a prime example is that I might be really interested in animals, and my interest inventory might say that I need to be a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld. However, I don't live near the ocean, I don't have any training in marine biology, maybe I don't know how to swim very well, or I'm not a very confident swimmer. And so just because I have interest in an area doesn't mean that it's going to be a good fit for me. Now, I can seek out training to make all of those things happen, so I can be a dolphin trainer at SeaWorld. Those things are potentially possible in the future if I'm really, really interested in that thing. But there is nothing in these interest inventories that measures whether or not I already have that skill set or access to those opportunities where I am. So just something to note there. And as we're talking about the things that come out on interest inventories, that's why it's important to talk about what are aspects or things about this career that you think you would enjoy or would not enjoy. So we're pulling out what are the things that connect with interest, as opposed to like, why can you or can you not do this potential job? So talking about things like reliability, these are all self-report measures. So it's somebody reporting their own interests. There's no like kind of objective way to measure somebody's interest. It's just based on their own perception. So that being the case, it naturally is going to change over time, because the things that you wanted to be when you were in middle school may or may not be the same things that you're interested in now that you're an adult or an older adult, right? So it's going to change over time, and you might take it at different points in your life and use it as an exploration tool to learn more about the way that your interests change over time. So again, using things in the way that they're meant to be used is really important. Adolescents, along that same line, may or may not have enough experience to be able, or self-awareness to be able to answer questions in a way that's really accurate to their interests. There's also potentially a lot of social desirability, and then some what's called face validity issues. So face validity just means how easy is it for the test taker to figure out why you're asking them something. And with interest inventories, it's pretty clear why they're asking you if you enjoy working on cabinets, or if you enjoy building things, or if you enjoy working with other people. So in terms of face validity, it's pretty easy for someone taking the inventory to potentially manipulate the outcome based on the way they want it to go, because it's pretty clear why the test is asking what it's asking. And there might be social desirability to answer questions that are more related to like certain types of careers that are more prestigious or well viewed, things that make more money. So I know when I've given this to teenagers, they've always said, well, I just want to pick the thing that's going to make me the most money as an adult. So there's some kind of flexibility or awareness of the fact that social desirability is a huge part of career interest sometimes. And it's important to make sure that we're talking about both the things that they scored high on, or things that really connected with interest, as well as things that they scored low on and things that did not connect with their interest. And I think some of the more classic interpretations of these interest inventories involves looking at the first 3 or 4 things that pop up high on the list and saying these are what you should do with your life. And really what these are designed to do is say, what are the things about the good match careers for you that seem like they would connect with your interests, and then looking at the things that are not a strong match and also talking about those things. So what is it about those things that you think you wouldn't like or wouldn't connect to your interest? And that in that way, it's more of an exploration tool and less of a predictive tool. So it takes a little bit of skill and finesse to be able to interpret the output, even though it's a pretty user-friendly format and reading through it is not very difficult. It can easily be seen as something that's very predictive and interpretive if you don't have the skill and finesse to be able to help with interpreting it in a way to focus more on interests. So moving on to talk about work value inventories. These are a bit different than interest inventories because our values as people are different than the things that we're interested in. Sometimes they overlap, but they are different things. So work values are really the aspects of a job that are important to my personal satisfaction or things that I feel like I need. So these are the things I feel like I need as opposed to the things that I'm interested in. So what do I need to be fulfilled? So work value inventories identify someone's work-related values and the things that they need in a career environment in order to be fulfilled and in order to find a suitable job choice for that person. So things that the values inventories look at are if I need prestige and recognition for my work, if I need a certain amount of independence in my work, if I need a certain amount of social interaction with others, if I need a certain type of compensation, or if I need certain working conditions in order to be fulfilled, happy, and successful. Some examples of more common work value inventories are the super, the Rokeach, the Salience, the Hall, and the Minnesota. And the ones that you'll see the most often are going to be the super work values inventory and the Minnesota importance questionnaire. And both of these really serve that same purpose of evaluating values and things that are needed to be successful in the workplace. So super actually has its own theory of career development that we will learn about in the career class, and his inventory really connects to that idea. But the super inventory really just measures the importance of different work values and then ranks them based on what's the most important and what's the least important in terms of career development. So there's an example of a readout in your textbook. And so it looks at like how creative do you need to be able to be in the way that you perform your work tasks, and how important is it for you to have a variety of tasks versus doing the same thing all the time, and how independent do you need to be? And if you think about it, these things are pretty important. And so I remember I was an administrative assistant in a debt collection agency while I was working my way through my master's program, just to have something to pay the bills. And a lot of that was logging payments and just a lot of clerical work. And it was the same thing every single day. And it was the most miserable experience of my life to just come into work, do the same thing every day, feel like nothing I did had any kind of importance, really question ethically about some of the things that my employer was doing in terms of the way that they went about collecting people's debts, and getting told the message all the time that like basically anything that you have to do that you don't finish can wait till tomorrow because it's not that important. So not having that variety, not having that independence, certain workplace environment things really make an impact on your overall happiness, sometimes leading to things like clinical depression in relation to your career. And so shifting gears, knowing that some of my values are having a lot of variety, having some creativity and getting to do what I do, having some independence, and then having some sense of being able to make an impact in my community with my work, being able to go through that master's degree program, really make a huge career shift, made a huge difference in my quality of life too. And I think you'll find that with a lot of your clients. It's not that career just relates to your sense of identity, but there's so many factors about your career that are impacting other areas of your life too. So Super's theory is really about looking at how those values may match or not match up to your career. And then the other part of the theory that we'll talk about in the careers class is how that can connect to your quality of life in general. Then the MIQ, the Minnesota Importance Questionnaire, is another kind of bigger assessment that's out there that you'll see. It's the same idea. It just assesses different values, things like achievement, autonomy, safety, status in the community. You'll see a lot of overlap in the values that are assessed in these different inventories. And then there are some qualitative inventories that your book does not talk about that also explore things like ranking of values, and we'll get to play with those in the career class. Moving on to personality inventories, which are kind of everybody's sort of favorite thing to take a look at. And this is different than the personality inventories that we'll look at in the next chapter. This is specifically looking at personality connections to career. So you might see, for example, the Myers-Briggs used in other areas, but it's designed to assess personality traits and how those might connect to different careers. So this pulls from different career theories as well, and some examples of personality inventories that you'll see. The MBTI is a big one that you'll see all the time. It's very well marketed, very well known. 16 factor, the NEO PIR is one you'll see out there quite a bit. And then the iSync is one that's not necessarily used as much, but the same sort of idea with assessing personality traits in relation to career. Then we have abilities and skills assessments. So these career assessments specifically focus on how well you can do things and your skill set related to that. So some of these things we took a look at in class. The CAPS, the ASVAB, which we looked at in relation to military. The CUTR, which is one that you'll see quite a bit in terms of assessing skill sets, which is a more general assessment. And then there's the Ability Explorer, which is a really great online tool that looks at skills and tries to match you up with careers based on your skill set. Career development instruments explore your awareness and knowledge about different types of careers. So it's not necessarily about your interests or your ability levels, but just how much you know about or are aware of different career areas. And so the purpose of these is to help learn about the best ways to support kids or clients in career development and exploration. So do they need more education about different types of career areas, or the way careers work, or how much do kids understand about career? So that's really the purpose of these development instruments, is to understand awareness and knowledge and help assess where counselors, school counselors, teachers need to help support that developmental process and education process in terms of career awareness. So a lot of this is used in career guidance or career development programs in schools, in colleges, potentially in like vocational rehab or work development, or even adult-based services like that. So we have the Career Development Inventory, which is made for K through 12 kids, college and university populations. Again, it just helps explore career planning, exploration tools. How do you make decisions related to career? How much do you understand about the world of work in the first place? And knowledge about different kinds of groups of careers. Because if you think about it, someone's knowledge and awareness of career is based on what they're exposed to. So depending on their home environment, depending on their school environment, and their community, they may or may not be exposed to a lot of different kinds of career options or a lot of knowledge about career. Think about, and I don't mean this as a negative thing, I'm just thinking about, for example, some of the communities in Wyoming that are very heavily based on mining industries. So in those communities, kids are going to be a lot more likely to be aware of career knowledge related to minerals and mining, and are less likely to have knowledge of career options outside of those areas. And so the purpose of these assessments would be to learn about what they're aware of and where their knowledge lies, and then potentially help introduce new knowledge so that kids are very much aware of all of the options that are available to them so they can make an informed choice. So in that way, career development instruments are a little bit controversial because some, particularly in the school districts, may see them as like trying to talk kids out of the types of careers that are common in their community, or industries that are common to their community. And again, at the end of the day, the kids are making the choices, the adults are making the choices. The purpose of these is just to make sure that they're aware of all of the options that are available so they can make an informed choice about what they're going to do career-wise, never to tell someone what they should or shouldn't do. The Career Factors Inventory is the same sort of idea, helping determine whether people are ready for the decision-making process. It's a pretty interesting assessment because it looks at all the different factors that you would incorporate into making a decision about a career, and then if you have enough information to be able to make that decision. And then the Career Maturity Inventory, which is used mainly through middle school, high school students. and it just measures attitudes and competencies about different kinds of career choices. So again, seeing what they're exposed to, what they have knowledge of, and how that's informing their decision-making process around career. So some other options that are out there in terms of career assessment, we have some combined assessments. So things that look at interests, values, and abilities all together in the same assessment. We have interviews, which, if you think about it, are really commonly used. How many times have you gone to apply for a job and had to have an interview? So this looks at experience, work history, different kinds of interests, different kinds of hobbies, for example, a lot of different types of things. So you can use interviews in terms of career counseling and learning about history with career, experiences with career, knowledge and awareness of career. You can learn a lot about interests by using an interview. So we don't always have to give someone an assessment on the computer or paper and pencil assessment to learn this information, because again, we have observations and interview tools that we can use as well. And the best way to go about this is to put all of them together, right? So maybe we give them an assessment, but we also do an interview so that we can capture information from multiple data points and make sure that we have the most complete picture of what's going on. Then we have employment assessments, which are used by employers to make recommendations or decisions about hiring, promoting, firing, any kind of employment status decision making. So again, these are different kinds of assessments you might use to try to get a job. A lot of employers are starting to use actual online assessments that involve interests or abilities to help make these decisions. A lot of them use interviews or observations. So there are a lot of different options out there in terms of employment assessments that employers are starting to use. And why this matters is because as a school counselor, as a career counselor, we have to make sure that clients are aware of what kinds of things are being used to make employment decisions and make sure that they are prepared to be able to do them well or accurately. And then relating to this idea of interviews, biographical information. So previous job experiences, previous life experiences, what kinds of careers did your parents have? What kinds of careers did your family have? What kinds of careers were you aware of growing up? What kinds of experiences have you had in jobs and in your life experiences that inform your decisions about jobs? All of these kinds of things are really important to explore also. So finally, we're going to talk about the idea of job analysis. And so this is meant to document particular duties or requirements of a job and the importance of these duties. So in any kind of job that's available, it's important to do an analysis to understand what kinds of duties are associated with that position, what kinds of skills might be required to be able to do that, and how important are those things to being able to be successful. Because if we don't have a good job analysis, it's going to be really difficult to try to talk to clients or develop assessments that are going to match up interests, abilities, those kinds of things with jobs, right? Because we have to know all of this information about the jobs to be able to help match people up based on that information that we collect. So this job analysis piece is really important for employers to be able to be accurate in the way that they are recruiting and assessing for potential employees. For individuals looking at taking a job, it's important to go through this process of thinking about these things and making sure it matches up. And then in terms of development of assessments, this is important because it's how they provide that reliability and validity to the outcomes of those assessments. So in terms of someone seeking a job, the job analysis process would involve a couple of different steps. So it's important to be aware of any kind of existing materials and data about this job or this career industry field. Then you would want, in terms of better understanding this job, supervisors and experienced workers to meet together, discuss these requirements, create the list of tasks and roles that are to be performed because they're the ones already in the industry, and so they would understand that and be able to give their perspective. Then we would want to put those things together so that the group can look at what you have come up with based on that information and make sure that it's accurate. We're basically describing a focus group process here in order to do this full job analysis. Listing outputs, knowledge, skills, abilities, including like machinery, any kind of technical knowledge, those kinds of things needed to get the job done, because we need that information to be able to match people up in those ability assessments, right? So this is a long process that someone would go through if they were collecting data about jobs, right? So for example, the government goes through this process every so often to update ONET online, to have accurate information about skills, abilities, and interests related to the jobs that are listed there. So moving on to the next steps of the process. It's important to have workers determine the percentage of time they spend on each task or skill, so you can figure out which ones are the most important. Put common tasks together into different areas, which would potentially connect to abilities or interests. Have the workers talk about how they know they're doing a good job. So this would help with some of those career assessments related to hiring workers. And then make the instrument to be able to properly assess job performance. And this would be used to look at promotions, look at assessing how current workers are doing, and potentially even be used for hiring new employees in the future, because we have this good understanding of this job, what's needed, what interests and abilities might align with that, and how to know that someone is doing a good job. So some of the future trends in employment assessment that are being considered in this evolving field is, of course, the impact of technology. More jobs are being performed online. A lot of job applications are being completed online without ever having met anybody, so that interview process is not always a part of the equation anymore. It's filling out an application, maybe taking a career assessment online for an employer, and then them kind of using that as a screener tool for who gets into the next round of potential consideration for employment. We have a lot of online career exploration tools now. So we are seeing sort of this idea of the virtual career center being developed in communities, because there's broader access to being able to get people support that they need if they don't have to come to a physical career center. So we're seeing a lot more of that. We're seeing more internet-based assessments. So again, things people can take online and not necessarily have to be in the presence of a career specialist or a counselor to be able to interpret the outcomes. We see a lot of this online now, actually. There's a lot of potential cultural considerations in employment testing and in career assessment that can create discriminatory practice without meaning to. And then there's just considerations of ongoing reliability and validity in terms of career assessment.